behaviour, things like that. And me going, well, why don't we try doing something like this? Or like, for example, there was a pupil who was struggling a lot being in school, but she was very driven to want to do dance and gymnastics, things like that. So me being me, right, okay, what are the things close by that she can get to where it's not too far? And do you know what, it actually helped her, and it helped her be a better all-round person, and she wanted to do well within this, which then she then obviously did better in school because she was focused on doing something outside of school.
Good morning and welcome to the Reflective Coach podcast with Coach Luca. In this episode, I'm delighted to welcome Hayley Foreman, who is a community and schools coach for the Saints Foundation. There is so much key and vital work that Hayley does by working with young people, by working in the community, by working in schools. She also extends by coaching a university women's team, and she does a bit of an academy coaching as well. So she is very well rounded, she has plenty of experience. She works with many different groups, different individuals, different contexts and different environments. And we talk much about that impact, how we work with those individuals, how something might change between working in the community from then working with the university team. And there is so much in this episode where we are definitely going to record a few more because there was so much in there, and we basically just touched the surface because there was just so much in this episode that we took away. We talked about schools and community coaching, how this may look, working with players, signposting them, going in and making that difference, setting up sessions that they've never been and engaged in before. How does that engagement increase? How does the impact look? What is the impact? Why is the impact being made? How can they go in and make that difference? How can they go in and deliver different types of sessions, even though they're coming from a football background by representing the Saints Foundation? And it's about breaking that mould, which is important, breaking that traditional thinking by going in and delivering different perspectives, different types of sessions whereby these individuals have never engaged with them before, and it can really then allow them to grow into new sports, get into participating into others, so growing that participation, growing those roots in the sport, and that impact then has been made through the Saints Foundation. As long as we're engaging young people in sports, that's what it's all about, and trying to create them to be lifelong participants is really important, and giving them that opportunity to stay fit, stay healthy, to develop those social contacts, to make new friends, to be in various environments, to go and take away that learning, to have the opportunities to follow a pathway, or to go out and be in an academy, or to play sports for fun, or to join a club. There is so much within that when we talk about young people. We then talked about signposting, the link between community and school, different types of sessions, so routines, habits and expectations. We talked about individual progression, how behaviour may look of a young person, how sport can support and decrease negative behaviours, increase positive behaviours. So then a young person can ask, how can I be a better person? And developing that type of thinking and that critical analysis at a young age is very important to set them up on the journey, set them up on the route that they're going to continue with and go on. Within this, we then talked about key questions. Why don't we try something like this? And that's an important question that can be asked, and that can really open up such an important question and mindset for a young person, as well as other coaches, professionals that we may be working with, other individuals. And these types of questions are so important. There are a few episodes coming up where we will look at psychology, question techniques, types of questions, why you might ask them when, whereby this will interlink with this episode. So it's great that there is a program of episodes which will really support this and allow you to develop your own CPD and professional learning in the basis and progression of it. We then looked at perspectives, so then a female coach going in, how does it look within schools, how are groups and individuals approaching this and seeing this, how does getting a female in break that traditional thinking, as I mentioned earlier on. The expectation may be what it's always been in terms of the mindset that has been created by a young person. So as I love the quote by Rio Ferdinand, you are a product of your environment, and young people tend to be that, so they think in a way that their parents, carers and family members have been thinking in terms of their friends. Their environment can have a lot of influence on them, so by going in and breaking that type of thinking and asking key questions can be so beneficial. Hayley then touched upon the differences in coaching different groups, so the feedback, the communications. We talked about being player focused, creating good people, and then we talked about the English structure. But there is so much in this, and there's much when you listen to Hayley, and I can't wait to have her on again. And there's certainly a lot to take away within this episode. So I hope you enjoy this episode as much as I have. You can find the Reflective Coach podcast on YouTube, Spotify, LinkedIn, Twitter, Podcast Addict and Anchor. There is multiple places that you can find it. You can listen to it, you can watch it, enjoy it. It's a Reflective Coach podcast everywhere. It is at TRC podcast _ on Twitter. I'm Anthony_Luca96. This is the Reflective Coach podcast. Drop a like, drop a follow, drop a subscribe, leave a comment. I hope you enjoy this episode. It's a great one to listen to, and there's many more coming your way. But right now, this is Hayley Foreman on the Reflective Coach podcast. Afternoon.
Hello, you right?
Yeah, I'm good. You okay?
Yeah, not bad, thanks.
Good. How's your day gone so far?
Pretty chilled.
Yeah. Sometimes these days of chilling are much needed.
Wait a minute, my headphones are now messing up. Right, let's try that again. There you go.
That's better.
There you go.
So yes, I was just saying, sometimes these chill days are needed, especially in the life of coaching, because we don't always get chill days.
No. Especially when Christmas has just happened as well.
No, it's exactly. So
it's definitely needed.
100%. So do you have a game this weekend or back to training?
Me personally, not at the moment. I've just had a break off a bit. But we'll be back probably next week.
Oh yeah. So I know my team got a game Sunday. We're in a cup game, and we haven't been able to train because obviously it's been dark in the week, and most of the boys are playing for the seconds tomorrow, so they can't train on Saturday, so we can put something on. And our pitch booking is booked for the Monday coming, so we haven't even been able to train. And we got a cup game, we got bare 11, no subs, and we're literally going to have to just go up against a really good team and put out 11 players and just do our best for 90 minutes.
Yeah, well, sometimes that's best though, isn't it?
100%, because it might give them 90 minutes and they might dig in and give it their all, but it's going to be an interesting one Sunday, especially on the back of Christmas.
Yeah, well, what are you on, I'm assuming on grass?
Well, it's going to be on 3G this weekend.
So it's definitely going to be on.
Yeah, if it was on grass, the chairman said, there's bad weather reports, games might be off. I was like, we're on 3G. The 1 week we could be on grass and it could be called off, which would have been the better thing. It's ended up being on 3G.
Yeah, it's not ideal, is it?
No, it's difficult.
Yeah. Wow. It's good that you've bought 3G though, because not everybody has it, to be fair.
No, of course, and they're the ones who are putting it on, so it saves us the cost, because 3G isn't cheap either.
Oh no. I remember at my old club we used to have to go to a school, and the amount of money we'd pay off our own back, obviously, because we didn't get a lot of funding from the men's team. But yeah, it was ridiculous.
Yeah, because I know our seniors, they wanted to train just after Christmas to put something on, and they booked 3G at our local velodrome, and it ended up being something like £60 for half pitch, 120 for full pitch for just an hour, and then if they wanted change rooms, it was an extra 50 on top. I was like, that's almost like £200 just for an hour training session.
Like, why the added extra for change room as well?
I was like, I know, it's just a room that's already empty that no one else is going to be using.
Oh, it's crazy. I get, obviously, cleaning it and everything, that probably counts to it, but still.
Yeah, it's a mad one, really, when it comes down to facilities and whatnot. But you're obviously based in Hampshire, Southampton area, is that right? What's it like, there? Because from the outlook, it always looks like Hampshire and Southampton are really nice areas. They're areas that I want to go to, really.
Oh, okay. They are very touristy places. The way I always sell it to people is, we've got the docks, we've got a very close link with London, it's not very far away. We've got an airport, so it's quite easy to get in and out of. But yeah, like with the cruise ships back in at the moment, it's crazy.
I never.
But yeah, like it's Hampshire. Like it's not a big crazy city, but like Southampton's not a big crazy city, but it's nice. It's a nice happy medium, I'd say.
Yeah, because that's what you want when you sort of go somewhere. Because like Southampton's always been like one of those places which has really sold itself to me, but I've never really known why. But it's just a place that I'd like to go to.
Yeah, come on down.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, like it's especially like with my job, I'm quite lucky to be able to travel to like, these country places where you'll get to a school and it's in the middle of nowhere. You're going down like a country lane. They're odd. But then you've also got one that's in the middle of the city centre. So it's nice to have that variety.
It is a good variety, and sometimes it does put it in perspective when you go to these different places that sometimes how fortunate we are, because when you do go down these country roads, you're like, they haven't got a 3G or they haven't got another decent club they can play for miles.
No, but like you find with those schools, they have a lot of land. So that's always nice for like a PE teacher point of view. But then when you go to like the city schools, like I used to work at one, they only had concrete. They didn't have grass. So we did lessons on the playground, playing football. I was like, what are we going to do here?
And it's hard, and then it's when it comes down to adapting your sessions, what you're going to put on, how you're going to do it. And, it all comes down to the key skills as a coach, because, as they always say, we have to adapt for the space, weather and how many participants we're going to have. And it's interesting concepts, but it's hard when you sort of get chucked into a session. I know that my mate runs his own private coaching company. He said, can I do a session before Christmas? And I was like, yeah, okay. But I got there, like, right, we don't want football because we're sick of playing football. And they had no equipment. I had none on me because it was usually just a football facility. But they had no equipment. And it was just really difficult to put on. I was like, what do you want me to do here? And I was just stood there for about 15 minutes. Like, what can I do? What can I do?
Lots of tag games.
Yeah, tag, and it was just a bit of Japanese football, so I could like go right. And we're not doing ordinary football, but I can use a ball, and I had to really get into like the team building stuff, and like because it's a community session, it'd be quite difficult, and because they're used to football, there's quite predominantly a lot of boys which turn up, and they were expecting football. It's like, oh, I've been told no football, and they were like, what, and suddenly then the dynamic changed, and it was just hard to sort of maintain. I was like, when's this session going to end?
Yeah, it's a difficult one. Like when we were doing the holiday courses, we had that really bad weather, and it was like, well, we can't go outside. The pitch, like half the pitch was waterlogged, even though it was brand new Astro, So we went in the hall, but we only had like an hour in the hall because another group were using it, and I was like, right, what can we do for an hour with like 30 plus kids from like 5 to, I think it was 12 was our oldest, and I was like, right, lots of team games, lots of multi-sports, just for an hour, and then had to go back upstairs into a classroom, and I was just like, right, what can we do now? It was like guess the player, quiz things, and it's not ideal, but we dealt with it. We're adaptable, and I think having that mind where you can just do things on the spot, it makes it so much easier.
100%. I think that just comes in like sports coaching and PE teachers in that sense, because I work in full-time in education. I see some teachers and they're taking out their classroom and like, oh, I'm out my classroom, I haven't got this, I haven't got that. Okay, I understand, I get that bit, you can access things, but when it comes down to a PE coach or a sports coach, I'm like, just take it in your stride, just adapt to what's around you and crack on with it.
Yeah, like we don't have the luxuries, unfortunately, of having all of these things. Like, I've been into schools, like you said, with like no equipment. Well, okay, what are we going to do then? You can't just stand around.
No, of course, and it's how quickly then you get your young people or individuals engaged, because, if they are standing around or they're not engaged, or they see that, the hour might not go the way that it's supposed to go, then they can really take advantage of that, especially working with students in that example.
Oh, yeah. But then I've seen it on the other hand of like, obviously I'm not going to downgrade coaches, but those that have all of these pieces of equipment and will try everything, and there'll be things set up all over the place, and I'm there like, I don't even understand this. How are the kids going to understand
this? Of course, yeah.
Like, you can have as much equipment in the world, but if you're not a good enough coach to be able to adapt to your situation, you don't need all that equipment, really, do you?
No, 100%. And I know, like, working with a good friend of mine, he's also a good area sales manager, and he was saying sometimes less is more, and I've never taken that into more context than I've ever, done before, because, we don't have to have all the fancy pieces of equipment. I know when I first started coaching, I was like, right, I got all these cones, I got hurdles, I got this, and I'm going to set this up every week. And then, like, years on, I'm like, I don't even use hurdles anymore.
No, yeah. They're nice to have, but yeah.
It's just about adapting and getting on with it, and it's such an interesting play the way that we sort of get straight into things and how we take things in our stride, because it's not easy as a coach to sort of be in that situation.
No, and I think as well, like, we get given, say, for example, like an hour session, but do we actually have an hour? No. If you're, for example, using a 3G pitch, they're normally back to back. They don't give you time to set up. You've probably got 50 minutes, 45 if you're lucky. So you don't need to have all of these things here, there, and everywhere. It is literally what you can get out of the participants within that amount of time. That's the key. If they leave, I've always said, if they leave happy and they've learned something, that's it for me. I'm happy.
And that's a great outlook to have, because sometimes when we go to a 3G, and as you say, you're back to back and whatever, I'm so conscious then. I'm watching time. I'm like, right, we're at 6 o'clock. We got an hour, and I'm getting on. Right, can they do a warm up while I just set this up, put a few cones out for shape and whatever. And then sometimes the coach is just like yabbering in my ear. I was like, you do realise we're really pushed for time here, and we don't need to set things up, and we can just do things as we can adapt. So it's like, right, we can just pick that one up. We can transition really quick, because it is limited. And the same when we're in schools. I see a lot of PE teachers, by the time the kids are out, they've had 35 minutes contact time if they've been lucky, because by the time they got changed, walked down, got back up, I'm like, if we calculated how many minutes were lost over a week and then over a year, it's staggering the amount of difficulty that a PE teacher does go through in that sense then in full-time education.
Oh, it's crazy. Like, I kind of learned years ago, like, although it may look lazy on the outside, this was not my words, by the way, but I now have that outlook. It might look lazy on the outside, but get the kids to do a lot of the work as well.
Yeah, 100%.
It gives them that independence, and it also helps you out a hell of a lot. I take that into like any sort of coaching environment anyway. Like, even my ladies team, they're like, pick the cones up, and I'm like, well, you're helping me out, aren't you?
And it's true, little things like that's needed though, because as a coach, if you're on the grass, you might already have been there an hour before, getting the goals out, setting things up. And I know I was quite articulate for it when I was doing more grassroots coaching, and on a Saturday when we had young kids, I'd always be there at 8 o'clock in the morning for their 9 o'clock session. And I was like, oh, it's so tiring on a Saturday and up early, but then you are putting everything out ready for them, and at the end of the day, if they leave at 10 o'clock or 10:30 and they're going home and you're still there picking things up, and you're like, right, at the end of the session you can all pick something up, get everything in, and it just makes things a lot more efficient at the end, but it also shows them that they have responsibilities to take part in it as well.
Yeah, like, it's slightly different, but so the university team that I take, we actually play their second team as well, and the guy I work with as well. And it was our game against each other, and he had like things set up, and footballs everywhere as they are, and he was packing things up and the players didn't help. And I was just like, okay, if that was the other way around and it was our home game, I would make the girls go do it. And it then ended up being that he had to go speak to them at training the next week and being like, what's the deal? Like, it just shows it's a bit almost disrespectful. And then from then onwards, they were like on it. They were like, oh, yeah, we're so sorry type thing. But I think it's obviously the difference between him and his team and my team is very different in terms of my lot do show a lot of respect. They want what's good for the team, and they know that I can hopefully get that for them. So even little things like picking up footballs and cones, they'll go do. But for his lot, they were like, we've lost the game, we're just going to go straight into the changing room. I was like, you've got to help him out. He's lost the game too at the end of the day, do you know what I mean?
No, absolutely, and that's something that I've tried to instill in an under-19s team that I've taken over. So obviously they're starting to become young adults now, they're drinking, partying, they're with the seniors, so it's a very different dynamic to what I've experienced between coaching young kids. So it's a big learning curve for me as well in terms of how to coach and manage them and be with them, but they all have responsibilities to take part in it as well. It's not just down to us, and it can be difficult because sometimes you think you're turning up, you're putting all the kit out, you're setting up, you're managing the game, you turn up and they get the benefit of it and then they just leave. And I was like, well, no, we've all got a part to play in it, and even though we're young adults, we all got the responsibility to understand what role we have here, and it's much more than just that 90 minutes. It's about what we do off the pitch as well, and come together as a team, which is really important.
Yeah, and I think, like, if you all help, it does show that you all are part of the team and you all want the same thing. you know, my ladies team, for example, they age from 17, 18 to 22. So they are in that similar stage of what you were saying, you know, going out partying. But like, as soon as I went in at the start of the season, I was like, look, I know you want to go out drinking, partying, whatever. As long as you turn up to training and turn up to match days and you're ready for it, I don't care if you go out and drink. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, go do what you want to do, but I'm not going to like, you know, stop them from doing it. But then if they do turn up to training late or turn up to a match day hungover, there will be lots of precautions to it, but I've obviously got to take that all within my stride. You know, be patient, be professional, all that sort of boring stuff, I guess.
Yeah, of course, but you know, they are young people as well, and we've sort of been through it ourselves, and you know, it's difficult because they are at that stage where they want to go and experience and do these things for the first time, and they got a bit more freedom where their parents are allowing them to do it, and you know, they have this ability because they're at this age now, and it's nice because you want to sort of support them on that journey as well as going, right, we're here for football, but enjoy being a young person as well, which is great to see.
Like we do feedback every now and again, like with the university teams, and one of the big things that came up was that I have this sort of like energy of I want them to be better people, not just better players, and they can see that I care about them as people, not just obviously players on the pitch. You know, if somebody's ill, I'll make sure that they are well enough. If they're not well enough, then I won't obviously put them on. If it means that we're playing with 11 players, we'll play with 11 players if it means that I can keep them from getting worse, kind of things like that. But yeah, that was a big thing, and I think that hit most of it. Does show that I do care about them, and they can notice that. And I think that's obviously quite nice to take away from it all.
Yeah, and it's great because sometimes, you know, that feedback is so important to receive, and even if it's little things, and you know, what you might have as an objective or an outcome, or what you'd like to instill in your philosophy or approach, you know, even if you just got a little thing back like that, it can really mean the world to us as coaches, and just, you know, going, do you know what, it's actually worth my time while I'm doing this.
Yeah, I've always been one of those coaches of like, obviously you've mentioned philosophies, where I'm always a bit like, I still don't know mine, and I probably should, but I think it's literally just as long as we're doing well and as long as everybody's happy and we're working towards some sort of goal, I'm happy. Do you know what I mean? It's one of those where I'm still like, I still don't know. I'm always changing ideas and things, and it's all just a bit, nah.
But that's exactly where I feel sometimes at my point. I'm 26, and sometimes you read about when Mourinho and Rodgers, and they sort of maybe at a young age they established their philosophy and they've just kept the principles and maybe tweaked little things. But I'm like 26 and I'm still like pulling little things out, or I'm like, I don't want that anymore, and then I'm like listening to things like you shouldn't go against these principles because they're set in stone, which is very much the Mourinho way. And I'm like, well, my philosophy is continuously changing. Some of the principles are the same, but it's all about what we continue to learn. Because I might learn something now in my 19s, and I go, do you know what? That's not going to work with a seniors team, so I'm not going to, you know, get into that anymore, or I don't need that part of my philosophy. So, you know, I don't think you have to have a set in stone philosophy when you start out coaching, and it might continue to adapt because you're still finding your own way, especially as your experiences shape you and you shape your experiences.
Yeah, I think like especially with me, because I do so many different things throughout work, like I'm always on the go in my head of like, right, I need to be like this for the, you know, 5-year-olds in PE, and I need to be like this for, because I do like coaching mentoring for a grassroots team, and we do under 8s to under 10s. So, you know, I've got to be on the ball and think for them as well, like how can we do this and make it better for them. And then obviously going to the university team of, right, well, this is what they want to go and win the league, they want to win the cup, right, we'll go do that. It's all very different, and these stages that I'm going through, like daily, like hourly even, it's, some people are like, how do you do it?
Yeah, of course, and you know, it's great to have that adaptability and, you know, meeting the needs and the feedback of the individuals that you work with, because, you know, they're all different in terms of those different environments, those different contexts, and it's great because we might have our own philosophy. We might go, right, a lot of discipline, we're going to look for, you know, optimum performance levels, we're going to try and push for the highest standards, we're going to try and win leagues and all this. But then sometimes with our backgrounds where we are working in grassroots, then out in communities, out in and out schools, it then changes our philosophy, because you're like, well, we've seen how to create good people, we've seen that we need to create sessions that we need to put on programs to engage them. And sometimes if we're getting engagement and we're developing players, and that's what's been kind of hard for me to take over the 19s, because I'm like, right, they won the league and cup last year, so they got some of the players who are still young enough to play in this 19s age group. They got a 16s which come up who are very new. They got a new coach who I've come in, so we've already got 3 different playing styles and philosophies which are mixed, so it's about getting in this way. And I was like, right, so the players who had success last year are going to want to continue this success, but we're not at that stage to have it because the squad's completely changed, so we're not having as much success as they've known it. So it's how we've had to integrate and adapt their mindset to also meet the needs of the 16 and change it in a whole team dynamic. But when I was speaking to the chairman, I was like, right, so the objective for these original 19s is going to win the league, win the cup again. But I was like, well, no, the objective actually has changed this year. It's going to be developing players into first team or second team players, and regardless of where we finish in the league or cup.
Well, as long as you're all on the same level as well, like, the actual participants themselves want that as well. And even if it's just a small success, I'm sure they'll all be happy with it. Like I said with the uni team, that was the first thing they said to me: we want to win the league, we want to win cups. We're on the way to doing that. We're top of the league, undefeated still. We're through to the next round of the cup. We're making that happen. We had a tough game where we were 1-0 down, went to half time, the girls started losing their head. I obviously did what I had to do, have a bit of a moan. I think the first 5 minutes we got a goal straight away, and then they just started rolling in, and it was just like, that was just one blip that we had throughout this season. But reminding them that this is what you wanted and we will achieve it and I will get us there, it then gave them that, okay, we can do this. And it took them 5 minutes do you know what I mean, to go and prove me right.
No, yeah, of course, and sometimes if they prove you right, and it instills that natural respect then, and that understanding in terms of what can be done, how you can support them, and if they play for you, then they're naturally going to have those successes which come along.
Yeah, and like, I see it in a different side with like grassroots, because the team that I mentioned, they do a lot of community. Everyone takes part. But they've got, for example, four teams for one age group. And I've said to a couple of the coaches, like, how are you doing in the league, blah, blah, blah. Oh, we're not doing the best. We've only got, little Billy, who's the best player. Okay, so is anybody else getting any goals, doing anything good? No, not really. But it's because it's the whole, they want to have it as a community feel, whereas everybody else in their leagues are going up and they are doing it by ability level. So their philosophy, yes, it works in ways, but then it makes it difficult for their actual coaches. A lot of them are, put down. They're a bit like, we're losing players because we're not winning things. So, I see it from both sides, and it does make it difficult for them, and then for me to go in and put on like a session for them. But I try my best. I try and keep it high spirited for the kids. Obviously, I only see them for training. I don't see them for match days. So I try my best for that hour that I've got them, and it kind of helps to give them that bit of extra oomph for the match the next day. Whether it works or not on the match day, I don't know. I get good feedback, but it's not always. I can't see it myself. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course. And it's interesting then, because we can only do so much as we can as coaches, and sometimes it might go against the grain of what another coach might expect or what the parents. But there are those different personality types of players in terms of what they expect, what they want. Some might want to be winning things, some are happy to have that community engagement, and it's difficult as a coach then, because then we're reflecting and going, well, so and so's not happy, but they're happy, and then you like try and pull their happiness, but then you're upsetting someone else, and it's like that tug of war, and you're literally in the middle.
Yeah.
And it's difficult, because then we constantly reflect, and we're like, oh, that session maybe wasn't good enough, or what do I need to improve? And it's a vicious circle sort of to be in sometimes.
Yeah, and obviously, like I said, with that one, for example, we normally have 2 coaches that split between 2 teams, and then we change over the next week, and so we're getting feedback, but it's like every 2 weeks. And I might see somebody this week and then the coach isn't there because they're a parent and their son's off ill or something like that. So like, although it's not consistent, it is at the same time, if that makes sense. But yeah, it's an odd one of trying to keep everybody happy, but still doing a good job myself.
Absolutely, and it's a difficult one to sort of judge that impact and sort of evaluate where we are in terms of happiness and seeing where we are, because we might get along in a journey and we have to take a step back sometimes and look at ourselves, because although we're coaching, we're trying to impact so many, and we're on the grass and we're part of this coaching program for a reason. If we're not happy, then it's only going to take away the kind of sessions that we deliver, the quality of them. And I got to a point where I was coaching an academy and I knew I had to take a step back for it, because I got to a point where I wasn't enjoying it anymore, and I was like, this is becoming more of a grind than enjoying it compared to what I used to do.
Yeah, and like I think we do player development programs, which obviously then leads into our like academy levels and pathways and things like that. And when you get to the higher end of it, the kids are a bit like, I've been here for so long, I've not been picked up, and they kind of put themselves down. Or we could have kids that have come from academy and got dropped, and they're obviously quite difficult to try and keep in football. Like I've experienced it where we have a big games night, because obviously we've got kids all across Hampshire from different venues, and a scout will come down and they'll literally sit there and watch, say, 6, 7-year-olds, and don't come anywhere near the older lot, and to see them go, well, why is he not watching us, and things like that, and I'm like, don't worry about it, like we're still enjoying football. And it's that thing of, we're trying to keep kids in football. It's made difficult, unfortunately, by other people, but we'll try our best to keep kids within sport and football itself. I think a lot of kids these days know that once they hit 10 onwards, it's kind of not going to happen for them, but you never know, it could. And on pathways like this that we have, we're trying our best to make that happen for them, but it is difficult sometimes. I think that was probably one of the most difficult sessions, where you've got so many different, like, especially at the age that they're at, you've got so many different like ways that they're thinking of, I want to improve, but I've been doing this for so long, where am I going?
And sometimes that can be the downfall of the system, because I can relate to it where I've been at a professional club myself, and you've seen players which have, I've been there 5 years, and you've seen players which have been there for that 5-year period, and they're still in the development centre, they've not progressed in the academy, and they're still asking the same questions, or they're still holding on for hope. And you're like, well, if you hadn't have made it 3 years ago, and you still haven't made it now, and 5 years has progressed, and you haven't even been given an academy session, you really have to then question, why are you doing this at times? And also, you're still chasing that dream, you're going to give it your all, but if you've been there 5 years, obviously there should have been enough growth by the development centre coaches to then give you an opportunity, at least at one point over that 5 years, to be in the academy. And that's why it's difficult sort of to work in the academy at some points, because when you look at that human and moral element, it's quite difficult, and then it sort of goes against what your job is there to do, is to maintain these kids.
Yeah, and then obviously I get the kind of like happy side of flipping on its head, in terms of, so we obviously go out to schools and do PE, our school clubs, things like that, and even at our soccer schools, we'll pick up kids and send them to our player development. And I had one girl recently who I put forward for it, and unfortunately we don't find out until they turn up to the actual session. But she came in the next week and she was like, Hayley, did you put me forward for something? And I was like, yeah. But obviously I couldn't, say everything about it. She was like, oh, I've got some like trial date. I was like, yeah, like it's okay. It's just like extra training and stuff. And then she was just like buzzing for the whole time, because, she was like, she could see that I saw something in her, and she's now progressing as a footballer. And like, I've seen it a lot more with girls, I think, because, especially with the Euros, and me being a female myself, I'm like their personal role model, as to say, they want to play football and they want to progress now, and they can see it as a career, as per se, whereas they probably didn't before. And I think parents now can see it as a career, rather than they're just playing football, they just want to be one of the boys type thing. But it's nice to have that other side of it, where I can see that there is a reason why we are doing this, and although they might be slightly older, there is still a chance for them.
Absolutely, and it's amazing that there's individuals like you and the coaching platforms, because once you're able to signpost and you're able to get young people into other programs, it shows the impact. Because I was just talking to someone else and they were saying, there might be a lack of impact in schools or a lack of connectivity with outside programs because schools aren't signposting or getting kids into outside sports, and I've seen that myself, and it can be difficult then because there's so much talent which ends up being wasted. But if we can signpost and keep kids engaged and keep them involved, then if they can try and grow and develop, and then, as you say, parents can see it as more of a platform or career pathway, then it's changing that stigma and it's really engaging more kids. Because we talk about engagement, participation, but then we're not looking at enough of it in enough detail, because we get to a point and then they drop off, and then we sort of then get younger kids involved, then the participation rates increase that way. But then we're not looking at all these kids who are floating about who are no longer engaged.
Yeah, and like I had a big thing last year because I was placed in a school and I was literally just there. It was just me. There was no one else. I'll be honest, it was a school in Portsmouth, so I shouldn't have been down there wearing my uniform. So I had my own branded stuff. So yeah, they put me down there and were like, right, we want to encourage more children to take part in sport. So I was like, okay, that's fine. Put on PE lessons for them. They said the participation rate for the girls alone had like skyrocketed. The after school clubs, they were like, why is there so many girls in it? And it came down to the fact of they'd never had a female PE teacher before. It was always a big, what's going on? Are you here to do PE? Yeah, but we've never had a female do it before. Well, time for change. And that big impact, for that school alone was huge.
And it's great to hear that, and the impact for the school and the engagement, increasing. And it's when working in education, having been around it so long, and then hearing those sort of similar conversations or comments such as, "Well, we've never had a female PE teacher before." It's astonishing in that sense when you sort of think of how deprived some communities or schools are, and how important for clubs to use the foundation levels or to send coaches out, because you are making that huge difference, and it's something that may not be seen at times in those schools or communities or by these kids. And it's about sometimes changing their routines or expectations for the better. I know we talk about habits, routines and expectations in certain ways, but sometimes breaking the mould is more beneficial than maintaining something that might not really progress a young person.
Yeah, and I think me, for example, going in there, because it was one of those schools where it was, this school struggles with behaviour, things like that. And me going in going, well, why don't we try doing something like this? Or, like, for example, there was a pupil who was struggling a lot being in school, but she was very driven to want to do dance and gymnastics, things like that. So me being me, right, okay, what are the things close by that she can get to where it's not too far? And you know what? It actually helped her, and it helped her be a better all-round person, and she wanted to do well within this, which then she then obviously did better in school because she was focused on doing something outside of school. And I think the whole it was just an outlook of I can do something and be a better person, even though she was like in year 3 or whatever. But it still showed, even if she probably didn't think of it that way, but we saw it that way. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, of course. And if you can integrate that and start developing that and evolving that thinking at a young age, or even if she hasn't yet, but she is sort of thinking about it or giving those kind of comments, it shows that we can really get through the young people and start evolving this. Because they do get to an older age, as you say, they might be closed minded, or they might be dropping off, or they might be going, why am I still doing this? But if we create that mindset where they can be like, right, constantly push, constantly opportunities, constantly rework, then it's how we continue to approach and move forward. So it's pivotal in terms of the work that we're doing in the community and that you're doing. And if we can engage them from a young age, and it just shows the impact that may have at an older age. It's just difficult then, because you can't measure that impact, because you might not see them again from year 3 into year 7, 8, 9 or whatever. So but it's interesting concepts in terms of the community work, the foundation, and being out in different schools and working with so many different young people. It's so rewarding every day.
Yeah, like my day to day is different, and it doesn't look the same at all. But I really enjoy the fact that You know, in the morning I can be teaching year R's PE, and then in the evening I can go and be teaching the university ladies team, and then everything in between. I like to be busy. I'm one of those people. But yeah, having that variety and be able to do something different. You know, most people, like I said before, most people are like, how do you do it? And I'm like, it drives me to want to do it and to do better. Like, especially obviously within women's football itself and girls football. Like, recently I've had a girl. So we do a girls only after school club in one school, and I said to her, I was like, oh, okay, we've got a girls only session starting for our soccer schools. She's like, oh, okay, that's amazing. Can I come? Blah 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 blah. I was like, yep, talk to your mum. Blah blah blah. Get her to like sign you up and everything. She came to it. We were lucky enough to have a player appearance from the ladies team. She was like, can I get this signed? Can I get that signed? Blah, blah, blah. I was like, yeah, okay, like, you know, like proper excited about it. I was like, oh, calm down a little bit, but it was lovely to see that excitement. She's now gone on to going to watch the Southampton ladies team. She's constantly asking me questions every week. She wants to come back to our girls only stuff, and to have that, this little bundle of joy who's now found this thing where she's like, oh my god, it's so lovely to see.
And it's great that, you know, you are creating success stories, and, you know, it's great for that young person because that might be their outlet, their escape, or something that they strive to look forward to. And, you know, you set them up on a platform where you could just go in and do a few sessions. You might be there a few months, but, you know, they could be doing it for 5 years, or they could end up playing right up until they're an older player, and suddenly then their daughter or their own child wants to get involved. And it's amazing to see, you know, the work that, you know, ourselves, yourself does, and that it's not just about short-term impact, and you could create a lasting legacy even if you don't realise it, or even if that's not the intention to at times, and sometimes it's just going in and doing a bit of intervention work. You end up naturally doing that because of the work that you end up doing. And I know when I've been out in communities doing work for sport development units, and when I work for Cardiff City Foundation, you know, it's very similar, and it's so rewarding to see. And but then it's difficult at times because some communities you go into, and Cardiff's not a majorly massive area, for example, compared to like London, but it is a big enough area. If you go to one area, some kids have never been to the stadium, and then you go to one other area, they're like, oh yeah, we all go to the stadium, we all go to town quite naturally. And it's quite disheartening and heartbreaking to see when you go to those communities and they're like, we don't even go to the town, even though it's, you know, 20 minutes away. And the difference in communities and young people, and, you know, sometimes the work that we do in those really deprived ones is so pivotal.
Yeah, and I think like those deprived ones that you mentioned, they appreciate it a lot more. I find, like, for example, the school that I was saying about with the no grass and just playground, they appreciated me being in, and they'd be there like listening straight away, and there wouldn't be any sort of like behaviour issues. And then, you know, in the classroom with their own teacher, they could be on the sad face every day, and they always do the whole, how can you get them to be so, you know, well behaved? And I'm like, because they want to do sport, they want to do all of these different things in PE and try hard and almost look good for everybody else, and almost for me as a teacher coming in to take the session. And they just kind of sit back and go, so they can do it. And I'm like, yeah, and I've obviously proved that to their class teachers that, yeah, they can do it, but for you, they're not going to, because they don't enjoy sitting in a classroom, working at a desk, doing maths, English, all of that sort of stuff. They want to be out, they want to be busy. I was like, people are different, and you need to start. I think we've still got this whole, you know, mindset of, oh, we have to learn this way. We don't. We can make it fun and enjoyable for kids. And I think that's a big thing that a lot of teachers need to start realising.
And that relates nicely into something that I've seen on Twitter this morning, is why aren't kids enjoying education? And it's simply because it's so robotic at the minute, and it's just so death by PowerPoint. I know when I was speaking to my boss in my last show, I said, I'm supporting in lessons at the minute, because I went back as a TA, because, you know, these jobs are difficult at times when it's funding cuts off, etc. But I went in as TA and I really enjoyed working, but I said, I'm watching 25 PowerPoints a week. I'm getting bored, but let alone the kids as well. And then you're expecting kids to do so much then in their form periods, and then they're going home, they're having homework, and it just becomes so repetitive. So then by the time they're in year 10, no wonder the mental health issues are increasing. And then I was speaking to someone else the other day, it's because there's not not enough creativity. So when it's a nice day like today, for example, here in Wales, if you were teaching, you'd be all right, let's go outside, let's do an outside lesson. Maths doesn't have to be sat behind a desk for 5 years learning the same thing over and over. Go out and do something different, be creative. And that's where as sports coaches, we're very lucky. We get to be indoors, outdoors, and get to be in different settings. And sometimes we can take kids outdoors and adapt to it really well. But when it comes to teachers, I don't think there's enough creativity being developed in the curriculum right now. And no wonder kids have an increase in mental health issues, or disengaged, or they're bored of being in lessons, and then they respond well when outside agencies come in and work with them.
Yeah, well, like, even when I was at school, I struggled a lot. I'm dyslexic, so, the classroom stuff for me, it was hard, but I got through it. When I got to secondary school, we were lucky enough to be able to pick our lessons, and you'd probably say my lessons were all quite easy. There were things like photography, sport, music, travel and tourism, things like that, which everybody else that I'd in my youth football team would be like, I got away with doing that. They happened to do like history and a language, and I'm like, it suited me to do that, and I think it proved that we need to be more adaptable, especially in secondary schools, to actually giving kids more choice of what they want to do. If they want to do photography, let them do photography. Okay, yes, people might see it as taking a couple of pictures and being done with it. It's not. There's more to it, but you can be creative. You can use your mind. You can get out, do as you wish. Sport, obviously, it was a bit different for me. I wasn't able to play with the boys. It was me and one other girl in our class, and the rest were all boys. I personally feel like I might have fluked my GCSEs because I didn't actually do the participation stuff for like football, for example. But because of the school knowing what level I played at, they were like, oh yeah, we'll give you an A, whatever. But it is getting better. And I think schools in themselves just need to change and be a bit more adaptable to the new world, as to say.
Absolutely, I completely agree, and I've worked across 3 different schools now over the last few years, as well as when I worked for the foundation and all the other sport development stuff. So I have such a wide range in terms of teaching that I've seen, and being in it full time or going in and out of lessons, and it's great to have taken so much away from so many different teachers and professionals. But I'm like, right, if I was an assistant head in charge of teaching and learning, I was like, I'd want so much more creativity. I'd be encouraging outdoors a lot more, and I'd be like, right, get rid of PowerPoints. And there's so much more technology available, and we talk about growing space and getting kids engaged outdoors, but we give a lot of outdoor work to some of our disadvantaged students and some of our more challenging. But I was like, but why is it not the same for our higher achievers? Because sometimes it can be argued you're rewarding the negative behaviours. I was like, okay, yeah, there's interventions and all that, but for the well-achieving ones, they might really benefit from just having a day outside, just having a breath away from schoolwork, or doing it a bit differently.
That was a big thing that I hated when I was at school. All of these kids that were messing around and getting into fights and whatever. I get why they do it, but at the same time, why is it like, I'm sat in a classroom, bored out of my mind. I was like, I want to go to Thorpe Park, or I want to go out bowling, or something like that. And it still happens now. Like, I'm quite lucky to kind of be in the loop. My brother's in secondary school, he's in year 11, and my mum works in a secondary school. So I kind of see what happens, and it still hasn't changed, unfortunately. But I think more people speaking up about why are we not giving these rewards to normal children, as to say, and making it one of those things where it can be seen as a reward for anyone, not just, oh, we've got to keep these kids in school because they're a little bit naughty, so we'll make it a target for them. Like you said, give them a break. These kids need a break every now and again as well.
And that's what I mean. If we release the valve a little bit, then they might end up, engaging better in lessons, or attendance will increase. And because we're too busy to be on them, and sometimes we need to have that. But when we are on them, some kids are like, oh, just F this. I'm not coming in tomorrow. I'm sick of this. And I completely look at the kid and I completely sympathise with them. And in a part of my job, I work in a behaviour unit, and it's expected discipline. But then I argue, right, but we need to be more inclusive and change it, and it doesn't need to be about this discipline. We can talk about it and work in different ways and get that right balance, rather than just be on them, and then kids are coming in complaining, then they're playing up, and then we're never really breaking that cycle, and then we're just seeing a consistent reoffenders. Where I was like, but if we do this important intervention work and we get the balance right, then we're going to see more benefits. So it's really interesting to see it in terms of what we do full time in education, in terms of what outside agencies do. And I know we've been very heavy on your community background in terms of the schools and stuff, but you've got such an extensive background, because when we take away from that and then you can go, right, let's focus on the actual football coaching. Do you find that, do you enjoy that balance, or sometimes you go away enjoying your school and community work more, or do you enjoy head coaching more? Do you prefer one or the other, or is there that nice balance?
I think there's a nice balance of it all. I think if I was just, like, obviously, like I said last year, I was in one school doing PE, I wasn't able to go and do those extra, player development programs, be part of a grassroots team. It kind of did feel a bit isolated. So this year, obviously, I made that change and was just like, right, I need to be doing this and more stuff with like women's and girls football, because the whole point of me actually applying for the job at Southampton was so I could progress and help to make women's football a better thing. But now I'm in a lot of a happier space for work. I couldn't go, I prefer doing that a little bit more than that. Every day is different. I think obviously throughout the summer, for example, and I'm sure you probably had it before with like holiday camps and things like that, 6 weeks can be quite long.
Absolutely.
And of the same thing, and I think that's when it hits of, I'm so happy that my day-to-day stuff is so different, and I think it's needed.
No, it is. It really is. I remember when I started out a sport development unit, and we were doing holiday clubs, and it would be very structured. So the kids would come in at 8 o'clock, and you might have them till 6 o'clock, but usually you'd end up having a few coaches in the morning, and it'd swap in the afternoon, which worked really well because they were such long days. But I remember doing some days, and they were just so repetitive and repetitive. I was like, oh, I can't do this over summer for 6 weeks. And when I got back into normal things, you're in and out of different schools, you're doing community settings, you're working with different kids, you're in and out of meetings, CPDs, training, you're travelling a bit, and I love the hustle and bustle. And sometimes when I'm in school, I think that I'm so lucky because I don't have to travel anywhere. I can just be in a one place all day. But then sometimes like, oh, I'm sick of just being in one place all day. I want to get back out in the community. And sometimes it's difficult because it's that tug of war that I have with my own self. Like, I want to go this way, I want to go that way, and that's why I say I want to be a teacher, because I want to experience it. It has always been one of my objectives, and I want to try and make that difference. But I've always said to myself that I can't see myself being in teaching for like 30 years. I think I'll do it for like 5, 6, 7 maybe, and try and have a stability in terms of my life. But I don't see myself doing it for 30 years because it's not enough for me.
No, and I think, like, I know obviously I moaned about 6 weeks of the summer, but I completely agree. I think if I was doing the same sort of job every single day, I think I'd go mad. I know we're all a little bit mad, but do you know what I mean? I honestly think I'd go crazy. Like, I like to have the differences between all of these different ages, all of these different backgrounds. Like you said, going back to like the holiday courses, our like curriculum for the week is the same, and the kids know what days, for example, the competitions are. So they'll be like, oh, we're coming in this day because we know it's this and this competition. And I'm like, I don't know if it's quite sad that they know what the days are going to be and what competitions are going to be on that day. Like, I agreed to do our residential last summer, which went from the Sunday to the Friday, and just to have that time away from normality, it was a release. And people were like, oh no, you don't want to do the residential because obviously you're there for like the full week with these same kids, blah blah blah. And I was like, no, I actually really enjoyed it. Okay, yes, we had our ups and downs, but being able to be in a different place, working with these kids like who want to be there. We were lucky enough to go to the stadium, do a tour down there, go to the training facilities, all of this stuff, and have all of these new other coaches come in for the kids to experience. I was like, that to me was the break I needed. And people, other coaches are like, oh no, I don't want to do that, blah, blah, blah. I was like, no, I want to do it. Like, I've even said that because we've got 2 weeks this year, I was like, I'd happily do both weeks.
And even when it comes into a conversation and just listening to you there, I'm like in awe of listening to you because, I'm then piqued on my interest because I'm like, oh, it sounds so interesting, sounds so different, and everything's might change from day to day, and it's stimulating work with the kids, and obviously you might have your ups and downs, but that's just part and parcel with everything in life and what we do. And that's why I'm like, oh, do I really want to go in Monday? Because I'm like, oh, I'm going to be stuck doing the same routine every day until the next half term. And that's why I end up doing this in my own time. And because I enjoy talking to coaches, I enjoy, being busy, editing things, setting things up, or reaching out and learning off and off each other, and hearing about other people's stories. And this is what excites me. And I'm like, I can't wait to get back into that side of things. And that's why I try to keep this going alongside what my career is at the moment, because because this is where my real interest is.
Yeah, I know it's probably not the same, but like going back to last year where I was in this one school, I was like, my day to day is literally just like talking to children. And after a while that gets quite tiring and obviously quite boring, but being back to it this time round, I'm actually out seeing other coaches, like hearing what they're doing and what they're going through at the moment and different things like that. So I totally get it in terms of, you want to learn from other people, you want to hear their experiences. Like, we're quite lucky in terms of a lot of our coaches can be from the university, so they're not all based in Southampton. They might be based from, Scotland or London, or do you know what I mean? So having that variety of the backgrounds from other coaches as well, it is nice to have, and I think that's definitely helped, for example, this season so far for me as a coach to now be like, I am happy in my job, because I was obviously having a bit of a wobble last year, but I've jumped over that hurdle. I'm fine now. I'm a lot happier in my job. But I think we're always going to have those wobbles, aren't we, to be fair, in our jobs.
Of course, and I'm glad that you are happy in your job, because it can be such a difficult period to go through when we are in that period of time. But even though you are coaching, you do have this background in terms of education. Is coaching something that you always wanted to do or saw yourself doing?
All honesty, no. I actually was speaking to somebody the other day about it. I was like, originally I wanted to go play out in America, but due to like lack of funding, and I always say a poor pathway for girls and women's football, I went from 15, 16 straight into women's football. That was obviously not a good thing for me, because then I got injured, and the dreams of getting a scholarship and going to America kind of ended. But luckily enough, my college had these programs for different coaching, and one of them was the FA's level 1. So I was like, oh, I'll give it a go, see how it is. Loved it. I was like, I'm still in football, but it also gave me that drive of what I went through. I don't want other girls to then go through. I want to make that change of, that pathway. Why can't we have it like the boys and the men's do? They don't jump straight in from 16 into men's football. I think if they did, a lot of them would probably run and go, no, I'm not playing football anymore. But I was like, why should we have to do it? And my best friend, she did the same thing, and it then took her out of football completely. And I don't want people to go through that. So I was like, okay, I'll stay in football and I'll make this change.
And there's some interesting concepts there, because, as you said, it's a shame that the women and girls don't have it the same as the boys, and I completely agree, and that's what we need to continue changing. Hopefully that's the way it continues to go. But when I was 16, I ended up, my team folded at the age of 12, and politics came in because we were in year 7 and the boys were moving to different teams for the ones who were winning. So we ended up folding. Then I didn't end up finding a team till I was 14, and then I went there and they said, we got 50 players. You might get a bit of game time. I was like, it's not for me. I'm not just training. And then when I went in at 16, I was like, right, I've been told I have to go to seniors football. And I literally jumped straight in, and I went to one session. I was like, no, not again, never have I come in here. And then I just stopped playing completely. And that's why I ended up doing a lot of coaching, because I always had it in me and I wanted to do coaching. But it's such a shame to look back, because I ended up not having a few more years playing seniors football or a few more years playing junior football, and I really miss those years. So that's why it's part of my philosophy to give back as much as I can to the young players that I work with on terms of what I missed out. But you know, I was also talking to someone then. It's about that, you know, getting players like yourself to remain in football, because, you know, you've given so many years playing it. You've had this dream that you were following it. You've done all this training. We don't want sort of individuals like yourself or on that pathway to be there and then suddenly drop off because there hasn't been that next opportunity. Because, as you said, there is that pathway of coaching, or you might do performance analysis, or you might go into community coaching or whatever. But it's how we can ensure that these players who have been through that can remain in the sport, because it is such a shame to have all these people come through and then just drop off into nowhere land, really.
Yeah, and I spoke to my FA or UEFA C tutor about all of this stuff, and she was like, "What is it that you want?" And I was like, "Well, the biggest dream was to still go to America and coach, because women's football out there is just immense. Do you know what I mean? Like, even now,
Yeah,
I
of
still look
course.
at it and go, how?" But then it came to the whole that we need to change ourselves in England, for example. Like, okay, yes, we did really well in the Euros, but we still need to make sure that we are having this impact change, and you know, we don't put people through the type of things that obviously I had to go through, or you know, and I was like, okay, I could end up just staying here and trying to make that difference anyway. Okay, yeah, I could maybe do a summer or something in America still, just to see what it's like. If I like it, I might stay. Or if I might, you know what I mean, I'll stay here. But it was one of those things of, she made me realise, actually, why go to another country to see what it's like when things are changing, but can I also help to make that change for the better type thing?
Absolutely, but I think that's a really interesting concept in terms of what you can do here. But then it's interesting that you mentioned America, because, you know, a few people, I was talking to a few people across from America this year, and they've just practically sold it to me by just explaining what they do. And I just think the game is evolving so much in America, and it's growing, and there's so many more opportunities which are going to arise. And it puts it in perspective, because I was looking at a job. My mate lives in California. He's like, "Come out, live with me, come and do this." I'm like, "Yeah," because he's just like, tonight you might go out and be on a Palm Spring beach somewhere, or like the other week you went for a weekend in Las Vegas. And I was like, you are living the life, right? But like, from my UEFA B, I could go out for a job out there and I could be on like starting 30 grand a year. But here it's like, if I want a full-time job in football and I'm working unsociable hours, it's only £19,000 realistically, for doing that job. And I'm like, it's just madness how different that can be in America. But then there could be so many more opportunities to try and progress. It's an interesting one to comprehend, and we sort of look at what we got here. But then I think there's so much more which we can take from America and bring here, and vice versa. But you know, I wouldn't, if I, you know, I'd definitely look at America if I was you, and you know, you've got a lot to offer.
Yeah, and to be fair, like, part of the conversation that I had with my tutor, it was one of those things of, obviously the university team, it was all quite new this season for me, and she was like, well, you use that and see if you can get out there. If it's something you want to do, use that university team and see if you can go to America still. It was one of those of like, you know, do I want to go out there, do I not? And I'm gonna have to think about it and like write a list of like pros and cons, I think. But I definitely think like having this team this season has given me the experience to work in women's football in, you know, a side that I've never done before, and could actually be a thing to go ahead and do. Like, I know obviously you said about a UEFA B, but even on a C, you can still go out there and get a well-paid job. Like, I was looking at them and going, how much? I was like, what am I doing wrong?
Because you, even at that level, when you are doing it full time, you're enjoying it. Sometimes you might not even want to progress onto the B or the A or Pro, because you're at such a good level that you are really enjoying it, and you're just doing coaching. Whereas sometimes trying to get to those levels can be such a graft in this country, because we have to try and get there and invest that time and the money to try and make that sustainable career, or try and get a full time job. And sometimes you see coaches doing it, they're like, it's not worth the money that they're paying us to do it. So, you know, it's definitely an interesting concept to sort of consider and be on the lookout for, and you know, it's interesting to see where life takes people.
Yeah, like, so before COVID, I did the original level two, and then my team folded. Again, it was a girls' team, so it's one of those things of driven to help out women's football and girls' football. Because of that time, obviously, it's was it 3 years that you were obviously meant to do it from the start date?
Yeah.
Well, that then didn't turn out. So then I got onto the UEFA course, and we were like the guinea pigs, as to say. Got that done. I was like, okay, right, I'm driven to do more. Then went on to do they changed, haven't they, the national goalkeeping.
Yeah.
I was like, it's another qualification under my belt. I was like, I'm happy to just try and do different courses. And a couple of my colleagues managed to get onto the UEFA B, but places are like gold dust, and they've been trying for years. And I think one of them said, oh, he applied 2 or 3 years ago, and he's now like, I'm struggling to pay it because I wasn't expecting to get on it this far ahead, and not having the money basically now.
Yeah, of course.
But I was like, I know obviously there's a lot of schemes for female coaches where we can get it like part funded or things like that. We're lucky in that sense. I hate using it. I'm one of those people where I hate using, just because of my gender, I can get onto things easier type thing. But if it means that I can and develop better as a coach, then I'll go and do it. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like you said though, it's a lot of money for something that will be a bit of paper, for say, and not get you a lot of money back in return here, for example.
Absolutely, and I'd love to do my A, and that's the next objective and step for me, but it's like 3.5, 4.5 grand, and you could be told you fail at the end of it. Yes, okay, it's like a degree, and you could end up failing it, but I just feel for that kind of money, you shouldn't have to fail a course, especially... That's just part of my thinking, and that's a lot of money to invest to be told that you have to reassess, or you have to do the course again, and it's a lot of time, and especially for when it might not land you a full-time job, but it's a definitely tough journey, to be honest, of coaching, especially when you put in perspective of coaching qualifications and that journey, and it's a difficult one.
Yeah, and I think obviously I've never been to university myself, because of that outlook of, do I really want to pay that much money for something I know it's probably a bad way to say it, but to have a bit of paper to say that I can do something where I've now had this experience as a coach and gone through all of these highs and lows where somebody just at university has never had. I don't want to pay that much money and be in that much debt and go through all of these things. Like, okay, yes, there's happiness from university and things like that. And ironically, I do a university team, but I was just like, it's not for me, I don't think. And I think picking something and then having to do that for potentially 3-4 years, it kind of freaks me out a little bit.
No, of course, and I can completely, sympathise, because I was at the same age when I was like, do I really want to go to uni? Do I want to do this? Do I want to commit to it? And then I was working in a really good sport development unit, which has expanded massively. I was like, the head of that unit doesn't even have a degree, so why would I need one? And then it puts it in perspective then in terms of that. And I know my best friend, he's like, why do I need a degree for? I have a job I love, I'm happy in life, I don't really want to do that. And sometimes it puts in perspective in terms of my career goals and then in terms of life goals and balancing that happiness, because sometimes we put career too much and then it puts too much pressure on ourselves and then we become unhappy. And that's why it ends up becoming into this human element, and that's why it's been so interesting to speak to you, listen to you. And I know that we spoke a lot about community coaching, now it's ended up delving into a bit of career path and more about you, but it's just the way that the conversation has gone, and it's been so interesting to sort of gain that perspective. And I know we haven't even hit on head coach and being all of that and the role that comes with it, all the tactical elements, and I had so many other questions for you, but you offer so much, and it's just been great to sort of have this conversation and really understand it. And I know we planned this in, and I know you got a busy week, and it's been fitting this in, which I really appreciate, and we'll definitely have to do this again, and style it on something, another topic maybe next time.
Yeah.
But it's just been a pleasure to have you on, and I know I've really enjoyed having you on, and
Thank you.
I wish we didn't have to stop after an hour.
No, I'd be more than happy to obviously maybe set up for a part 2.
No, definitely, I think that'd be brilliant. But I'm so appreciative of your time, and I hope everything goes well, but definitely stay in touch, and good luck.
Perfect, thank you. Good luck to you too.
Thank you. Cheers, it's been a pleasure.
Cheers. Thank you.
No worries.